Good evening. Welcome to Chasing the Facts. I'm your host, Sam Chase, and our guest for this show is Dr. Glenn Thoren, well-known Chelmsford resident and political commentator on Chelmsford TeleMedia. Welcome, Glenn. Glad to have you on the show.
Thank you for the invitation to be here.
And what we ask all of our guests to do is to just give us a very brief summary of your educational and professional background and also your town service and public affairs background as well.
Public affairs, not too much there, but we can talk a little bit about, I grew up in Arlington, went to Cornell University for my education. I have a bachelor's and master's in applied engineering physics from Cornell. Went to work for Raytheon. They were kind enough to send me back for my PhD in electrical engineering and solid state physics. So I got a few years in college under my belt, and I've been in industry since 1969, primarily working on advanced projects that have applications in defense. Moved to Chelmsford in December of 1980. So I've been here a while, and we were here when we changed from open town meeting, which were pretty exciting when we were going to the open town meetings, to representative town meeting. And my wife and I, Evelyn, ran in 1989, the first time we had an elected town meeting. And she has been a town meeting rep every year since 1989. I had a brief interruption in about a half a year, and then somebody dropped out and I filled in for the second half of the year. So except for a half a year, I've been town meeting rep since 1989 as well on Precinct 5. Town service, I've been on any number of committees. I was on the Charter Review Committee that you led. I was on the Charter Review Committee 10 years before that. Currently, I'm on the Stormwater Committee for the town, working with the DPW. I've been on several other committees when somebody needed some assistance at the town level, and my work could help them do that and understand problems and work to solve issues, and I was happy to do that. So there are probably 3 or 4 more committees. But basically, we're very interested in having the town be the best town it can be. And one thing I really, really like about Chelmsford is people can have extraordinarily diverse opinions on the national politics, but when it comes to making the town a better place to live, we're all on the same page. And that's something that both my wife and I enjoy very much, participating in that. And as you know, you participate a lot in town meeting. We're glad to exchange ideas on the floor, off the floor, to do what we can to make Chelmsford a better town.
That is quite an impressive resume of both your professional background and also your town service. I would put you in the category of somebody who likes to give back. And it's always good, and we certainly have a number of people in town that fit that profile. Since you since you kind of alluded to town meeting, why don't we talk a little bit about that? And maybe we can start by having a little bit of a discussion about the form of government that we have here in Chelmsford. As you know, there are several different flavors that a Massachusetts municipality can choose from. You can be a city government with 2 or 3 different iterations of that, elected mayor versus city council manager, or you can be if you don't adopt the city form of government, you are a town, and the major choices there are representative versus open town meeting. And as far as the administration of a town goes, you can have what is called a strong town manager form of government or a strong board of selectmen form of government with an administrator to run the daily operations. So why don't we talk a little bit about that, your impressions. You started in 1989 with the first representative town meeting, so you're certainly well qualified to take us through 30 years of that iteration and maybe some observations as to whether you think that works, it doesn't work, how can it be improved, things of that nature.
If there's anybody listening that remembers what open town meeting was like, we held at McCarthy Gymnasium, McCarthy Auditorium, because we didn't have a larger place to hold it like the senior center. And my impression in the early days when I went to meetings that find out what was going on in the town, I was new to the town in 1980 up through 1989, it was extremely chaotic. You'd get groups of people who would come in masse until they had a chance to vote on an article they were interested in, and then they'd leave. And leaving a few people behind in case the motion was brought up again, just in case they had to come back and vote on it, but it was primarily run more like a pure democracy, which we can talk about, comparing democracies versus a representative form of government. But now we have basically a representative form of government where the precincts, the 9 precincts in town, elect representatives to represent their point of view at town meeting. And so I think, from my perspective, that process works better because you have more give and take from people that are paying attention to the issues in town over a longer period of time than interest groups that just pop in for one issue. So we get a better analysis of what's going on, a great feedback during the debating session at town meeting, and then some people, a lot of people in some cases, will make a decision on town meeting floor when they hear the arguments one way or the other, which way to go. Some people come in with strong opinions one way or another because of analyze the issues. So we had some of that in this town meeting. Other town meetings have been much more contentious in certain areas, but this town meeting was typical. We had people on both sides. In last town meeting in October, we decided to ban thin plastic bags.
Correct.
Where a year ago we decided not to ban thin plastic bags. Nothing changed except a lot of students came in and argued the environmental issues with single-use plastic bags. Now, I turned out to be on the losing side because I didn't think we should ban them. But this time it went the other way, and we did ban those, along with previously banned plastic straws. So it's a very interactive town meeting, and I think that's the way it should be, especially when some people spend the time to find out what's going on and bring good arguments to the floor.
And they generally do. I find that I'm sure there are some folks at town meeting that aren't paying that much attention, but I think the majority are, and of course it's easy for them because the major boards are all televised now, which was not the case 10 or 15 years ago. You have Board of Selectmen, Planning Board, School Committee, and Zoning Board of Appeals, and all of their meetings are always telecast. So you don't even have to leave the comfort of your living room to watch all these meetings. And I have to say that there are some meetings that I watch on TV, and when the meeting is done, I say, boy, am I glad I didn't go and watch the meeting. So it's very easy to stay informed, but I think by and large, most of the town meeting reps take that responsibility very seriously. So you talked a little bit about the differences between a democracy and a republic, and I find that to be a very interesting subject. Now, under the definition that you just talked about, Chelmsford technically is a republic.
That's right.
We are not a democracy. So if you can go into that a little bit and explain for the viewers what the differences are and pros, cons, pluses and minuses maybe.
Well, this is a topic that comes up frequently because people, argue about, we're challenging the democracy here, there, and they're using the terms democracy interchangeably with republic. And sometimes people don't even use the term republic because it's not in the vocabulary talking about government. But they are two very, very different things. A democracy would be primarily the majority rules all the time. So people can come and vote, and whatever they decide to vote, that becomes the law until a different majority decides to turn it back. So it can be very chaotic. And one of the things with a pure democracy, when you use that term that's an extraordinary negative, is the rights of the minority are not taken into consideration. It's just majority rules.
There's certainly no protection for them.
None at all.
And in a democracy, every eligible voter can vote on every legislative issue that comes up.
We have initiative petitions in Massachusetts, which is a hint at a democratic process, purely democratic process. Like at one time we're going to raise a gas tax every year without a vote of the legislature so that nobody can be held accountable, just automatically went up every year. And that was turned down by the voting population. Yes. Now, a representative republic, or in some cases you call it a democratic republic, has representatives like ourselves elected to town meeting, or in the case of our larger government, we have the House, we have the Senate, we have an executive office in the presidency, so we've got Congress, the presidency, then we have the judiciary branch, which acts as umpires on how the law should be. But here's the important part. There's a rule book that protects the rights of the minorities. It's called the U.S. Constitution. That's the rule book. We have bylaws in the town, which is not quite the same as a constitution, but it does say a lot of things about how you operate in the town. But in a representative republic like we have in the United States, we have a rule book, the Constitution. It can be changed. It's not easy, but these are the rules that protect the minorities, the Bill of Rights, free speech, Second Amendment, Illegal search and seizures are not allowed. So we've got a rule book to go by, and then the representatives, both the House representing the people, changing every 2 years, and then the Senate with 6-year terms alternating 1/3, 1/3, 1/3, protects the population from what would be the tyranny of the majority, which is what you can get in a democracy. And that, I don't think, if people lived under that situation, that wouldn't be very tasteful. The Roman Republic was run as a republic years and years ago, but the Greeks had a democracy, pure democracy, and they had extreme problems with, everybody's leaning this way one year, everybody's leaning this way another year, and it became chaotic, and the minorities whoever was a minority had no support in the government because they couldn't change the law. They couldn't get enough people to vote on it.
Well, I think the other, in line, going along and following along on what you just said, I think another benefit of a representative republic situation is that if it's done properly and you have the right people running for office, people that are paying attention or engaged and so forth, very oftentimes they will exercise their judgment, thinking long-term, what's in the best interest of the population as a whole for the long term. In a democracy, where everybody votes on every issue, I think more emotionalism tends to creep into the equation.
Absolutely.
And people vote more short-term. Not that that doesn't happen in a representative situation, but one of the things I do, and I'm just speaking personally now, when I vote for somebody to represent me in Congress, I'm not just hiring somebody to agree with me 100% of the time, because I know I'm not right all the time, and
I still haven't found that person.
Well, it's exactly, and I make mistakes. I'm hiring somebody's mind and their ability. I want somebody that can really look at the issues objectively and make what will be the best long-term decision, or what they think the best long-term decision is based on the facts at the time. And a lot of times that won't necessarily comport with what I feel at the time. I've voted many, many times for people that I don't agree with on a lot of political issues, because I respect and I trust their judgment to take everything into consideration and do the right thing. So I think that's another benefit of representative government. If we have people that, with that mindset, we all benefit in the long run. We might not like the short-term result, but in the long run we benefit. So
yeah, I also believe that there's got to be some due consideration sometime in the future to term limits. And people that make their entire lifetime career as a representative, to me, that just strikes me as wrong.
Now, have you always felt that way, or have you come to that conclusion?
No, I believe I've always felt that way, because when you get into a political environment, as we see, even in town environment, you get into a political environment, it's not the same as a real working environment. They have a lot of perks. They have a lot of things that they get that we don't get. They get special medical plans, special retirement plans. It's not like being in the working world, where you have to look at everything much more in a much more detailed fashion, and you have to compete. You have to be able to do your job as well or better than others to get promoted. You have to do your job well in order to stay employed. So if it's just a popularity contest and not necessarily what you do for performance, then politics has an attraction to a lot of people, that I can be in a political office and all I have to do is get elected every 2 years or every 6 years or every 4 years, and on we go, building up a constituency of people that like me because I do something for them. All I need is enough to get reelected. It's and work in the working world, if you have to run a company and pay people's salaries and understand what you have to do for them, when they're sick or they're challenged, need training and so forth. That's different than politicians that are looking at this as their career is to be in politics. I think 2 terms for Senate would be great. That's 12 years.
That's 12 years.
I think maybe 4 terms in the House of Representatives. That's 8 years. That would be fine to go that long, and then get fresh blood in.
It's very interesting, because I have the same opinion you do, but it was an evolution. For years and years and years, I thought term limits was just the coward's way out, the easy way out, because in my mind, the proper thing was for voters to be constantly engaged and select the best people. That doesn't always happen, or people are swayed for one reason or another. And I guess I've come to feel over the years, I'd say probably within the last 15 years or so, I think I have reluctantly come to the conclusion that we do need some form of term limitation, because I don't think people are well served by a person who's done nothing in his adult life except be a politician.
Right.
You want people that have some other background, some other life experience.
You might throw some engineers in there.
Exactly.
Some medical personnel,
Exactly.
some average workers in that position. Give them a chance to become somebody who makes decisions on behalf of all of us. And people often say, the elections are the term limits. If you don't want somebody in office, that you just don't elect them again. But an incumbent can pick up a lot of advantages
Right.
in contacts and mailings and doing favors for people. It's not the same as what they could do for the entire country, but just for enough constituents and bringing home the bacon so that they get elected again. And I've always thought that's a little bit not as good as it should be.
And I don't think if you go back to you talked a little bit about the U.S. Constitution. If you go back to the original intent by the framers, you read a number of the Federalist Papers and so forth.
I have been,
background.
actually.
And it's
Very,
very interesting reading. And you start to understand what the thought process was behind the forming of the United States government as it was constituted back then. Of course, there have been some constitutional changes since then. But you really begin to understand and appreciate that what was originally envisioned was not career politicians.
Right.
The idea was that people would serve a term and then go home and become citizens
exactly
again, and you would get sort of the turnover. But unfortunately, and it's not unlike every other country in the world, I suppose, the politician in and of itself has become a profession.
Right.
And I don't think the country really, or the state, has benefited from that.
and they kept giving themselves more benefits, more
Correct.
perks, more things,
Right.
more reasons to stay in that position than the original founders took place. When reading the Federalist Papers back from years ago, people didn't talk the way we do right now.
No.
So it's a little bit of a chore to go read those papers in the language they were written in. But if you take your time, maybe you have to read it twice. It
It's
all
not bad.
comes through.
It's not as bad as Shakespearean English,
No,
but
that's no comparison at all.
You're right. It is a little bit more difficult than the current.
A little bit more stilted than current colloquialism. But these, after reading, I don't know, maybe I've read 20 Federalist Papers altogether. These were brilliant men who had
Absolutely.
deep thoughts. And we lose that trying to, do what's expedient for the short term now, when this country and the rule book, the Constitution that was originally constructed, was constructed by truly brilliant men,
Yes.
giving us rights that, not giving us rights, recognizing the rights that were given to us by God and putting it down in writing.
Yep, that's exactly the impression you get when you read the founding basis document. So, moving on a little bit, let's talk a little bit about Chelmsford's form of government. Now, what we have here in this town, of course, we're a charter town, and the charter specifies that we have a chief executive operating officer in the form of a town manager, loosely referred to, I guess, as strong town manager, with a board of selectmen who is supposed to be in charge of making policy. So in this town, we have a manager that actually runs the day-to-day operations and a board that is supposed to act as a board of directors. In other towns, smaller towns usually, you'll find that you have a board of selectmen that actually is the operational authority for the town. You go to a town like Carlisle, for example, the board actually runs the town. They have a town administrator that implements
Right.
their direction. But if a chief of police needs to be hired, or even a police officer in Carlisle, the Board of Selectmen makes the hire. In Chelmsford, it's the town manager that makes those hires, and then the Board of Selectmen will do an affirmation vote to approve or not.
A lot of people don't understand that. They think the Board of Selectmen have much more power than they have. They're a policy board setting, broad directions, and also, helping the town manager understand what that policy means to them. He still has the ability to execute the policy, practically any way he wants, if it's not ridiculous, because they do have to review him. His employment is based on how the selectmen review him and how they feel about him. But the people around town think the selectman gets to, pick all the department heads, gets to fill the potholes, gets to, take down trees that are overhanging wires. They don't. It all goes through town divisions and the town manager. Ultimately, the selectmen set the direction. They do have a few things that they can do on their own, like set the tax rates and split or not split the tax rates.
Mm-hmm. And then there are some things some areas that they are in charge of. The selectmen are in charge of the highways, for example. And you talked about the setting of the tax rate, which is very important. The selectmen have direct reports in addition to the town manager. The town council reports directly to the selectmen. And the town accountant reports directly to the selectmen, which I think is a very good arrangement, because you can see potential problems if the finance accountant, the watchdog of the finance office, were to report directly to the town manager. That could be a bad situation if you got a rogue town manager.
I don't know the answer to this, and I'm sure you do, is who hires the accountant?
The selectmen do.
Okay, so that's important.
Right.
Yeah.
And they conduct the annual performance review, because again, the town accountant is a direct report to the board. And as they do for the town council and the town manager, they manage that review process. So
one of the things I think that is important in this town, now we've done a lot of great things in making a lot of these meetings publicly available on public television,
yes.
And the town meeting is also available, and you also get it on YouTube, which is provided for by the auspices of this organization that we're in right now for TeleMedia. So if people want to go back and see what happened, they can pop it up on YouTube on their computer and take a look. But other than people digging into the internet to find out what's going on, there doesn't seem to be a lot of ways that the people in the town get informed about what just happened at town meeting and how does it affect you. Because that communication link is primarily available for people that dig it out.
Right.
Not something that people can easily see. There's not a lot of town newspapers around, and my main concern is people tend not to be in touch with the politics of the town that do affect them. And I would bet you that if you go into any precinct, a person might not be able to name 4 people that represent his precinct.
Well, it's interesting you bring this up, because this past Monday evening at the Board of Selectmen meeting, they were actually having that discussion. They were talking about ways.
So I missed that.
Well, you should go again. Follow your own advice. Go to YouTube or call up Chelmsford TeleMedia.
I was out of town that
You can watch the meeting.
Yeah.
And they had a discussion about ways to do community outreach. And I think it's a problem. 2 things, just observations that I'll make after several years of serving in town government. One of our former school superintendents said to me one time, he said, people don't pay attention until it's an issue that directly affects them.
True statement.
And I think that's true. I wouldn't say that's true for everybody.
No, but
it
generally
is true
it's
for many people, and that is not necessarily a derogatory comment. It's just that people are so busy trying to survive and live that they don't have time really to engage and dig out, as you say, the information. So that really was the part of the discussion that the selectmen were having the other night. The other side of that coin is that there is, or should be, some responsibility on the part of the average citizen to engage. I mean, I don't think I want to be part of a society where everybody gets to sit on the couch and make absolutely no effort and have everything spoon-fed to them. I don't think that's a good situation either. So the answer, I think, is somewhere in the middle, between the guy who relentlessly and aggressively goes to dig out the information and the guy who sits on the couch and wants to be spoon-fed. There's got to be a middle ground in there where we can do something to reach people, and I don't know what the answer is, and the selectmen were having a hard time with it the other night themselves.
So the whole thing is, how do you push information that might be of interest to the general population now, so at least they're aware something happened that may affect them. One thing I'll say I grew up in Arlington, again, as I mentioned. Arlington was a very politically active town. Everybody was doing something, not everybody, but there were a lot of people doing things. Chelmsford's the same way. We have a lot of committees and a lot of volunteers and a lot of volunteer activity going on in town. And so from the political activity point of view, this town is great because people step up, and they do things, and they're asked to volunteer, and they show up, and they do things. So that part has huge involvement. So we have a lot of committees around town. parade committees, stormwater committees, other charter review committees. There's a lot of things going on in the planning boards and everything else. So great volunteer town to make the town run well. The rest of the people that are affected by those that try to make the town run well either feel that they're doing such a good job making the town run well that they don't need to pay attention to anything, or they're busy like you just said, and people are busy. So I was thinking in terms of can we attempt to collect available emails in town voluntarily and send out a push email to these people, or in some cases when people don't have computers, a flyer that goes out with a standard town mailing. This is what happened at the last town meeting you should know about.
And this was all talked about the other night. Some of the suggestions that the board was entertaining were the tax bills. So 4 times a year you get,
That's right.
If you're a property owner, you get a tax bill in the mail, and very often there will be enclosures that are not directly related to your real estate in that mailing. So that could be a way of doing it.
The ATEF enclosures.
Yeah, ATF. And so with that, you're going to get to roughly 13,000 households.
That's a big deal.
That's a big number.
That's a big deal.
And you'll get to other property owners as well. So that's probably a pretty good vehicle. I think a lot of, I don't know what the numbers are for people who are not computer enabled, but I would guess in Chelmsford the number is probably small. It's probably less than 30% that don't have access to a computer. So I think the email suggestion is probably a good one as well.
Email is very good. Paper is good because sometimes you probably get, like I do, I get 100 emails a day.
Yeah,
it's just throw it away,
relentless.
throw it away, and there's one I should actually read. So putting a one-page letter in. This is what happened at town meeting in October in the next tax bill, or this would happen at town meeting in the spring in the next tax bill, saying how it's not going to affect you because we turned it down, or how it will affect you because we changed something. It's just people have got that and they can look at it. If it's done right, it's a 2-minute glance, and if they see something that has words of interest to them, they might make a call. So you send out the email with the information. Then if you need more information about what happened, what it means to you, call this number, town clerk's office or wherever is appropriate. DPW, if it has something to do with DPW. It would be a reach out to the people to connect them better back to the town.
There you go. So let's hope some of our selectmen may be watching the show, and
I hope they all are.
Well, some of these suggestions were talked about. I think you fleshed out a little more. We've got about 2 minutes left.
Oh my goodness.
Any quick observations on the recent town meeting?
I thought it was a good town meeting. We did turn down some proposals to put things like senior housing close to an asphalt plant. I mean, I was surprised about how much discussion that had because it just doesn't sound right. I live kind of close to the asphalt plant on 110, and when the wind's blowing the wrong way, I know it's there.
Yes, you do.
But if you put a senior housing development right next to the asphalt plant that's in Westford that we have no control over, probably not a healthy thing to do. And we made a few other changes in some of the districts there. I think that what we proposed for single-use plastic bags was not what I would have done. That may come up again. If you want to decrease plastic waste, you got to go after heavy plastic things. No plastic bottles, no plastic containers, no plastic milk bottles. Go back to glass on everything. And recycle the glass. Well, people might not want to do that. So you got to think through what impact are you having other than just feeling good about what you did.
Yep, I think that's a valid observation. We had a number of planning board articles, and there were 7 in total. 4 I would categorize as impactful, and those all failed, and 3 I would categorize as maybe housekeeping type things that should have been addressed years ago, and those all passed. So I think the indication was that town meeting, as they usually do, they pay attention. They listen extensively to the discussions. Many of the town meeting reps have done their homework in advance. And I've been in town meeting 22 years. You've been there 30 years. And my perception is that generally we get it right.
We get good people in
Yes,
town
we
meeting.
do. We do.
Yeah.
So, well, Dr. Glenn Thoren, that was a very fast half hour. And I want to thank you again for being on the show.
Thank you for the invitation to come.
And I'm sure we'll have you again at a future date, especially, and you'll certainly be on to do election commentary.
Let's
on the
find
next
something
election.
controversial the next time.
Oh, well, we can always do that.